There will come a day when the fear of death will be the favorite joke, passed amongst corpses, and they're already laughing. My love, please don't be afraid, but there will come a day when field mice will play in our empty sockets, when our bones become homes for living creatures other than our egos, and when time will jostle our skeletons out of the composition that is me and you, and will write with us love letters that spell IOU eternity. This is Carolina Haints. Welcome, dear listener, to the season premiere of the Carolina Haints podcast, brought to you by Wreak Havoc Productions. I'm your host, Dan Sellers. We talk a lot about lights here on Carolina Haints, from our very first episode about the Brown Mountain Lights to the famous Mako Light in Season 2. From Boston's Bridge in Season 3 to the light of the Mill Creek Swamp in Season 6. And we've only really scratched the surface. There are over 50 unexplained recurring lights in North Carolina. In fact, one researcher claims that the Carolinas have nearly as many ghost lights as the rest of the country combined. From the Ball of Fire in Brantley's Grove to the Four Nile Desert Light in Chappanoke. There's the Death Light in Tyrrell County, Ephraim's Light in Seaboard, Swenson's Light in Beargrass, Half Hell Lights in Bolivia, the Four Brush Road Light near East Bend, Teach's Light in Stumpy Point. There's the Morphus Bridge Light, Buffalo's Light, Momire Light, Evergreen Light, Mint's Light, Stedman Light, Campbell's Light, and something called the Devil's Pockwison. The list goes on and on. So let's talk about a few of these and the legends behind them. The Cove City Light, located in Cove City, is in Craven County, North Carolina. The story goes that while out hunting, a group of men saw a bear and her cub. The men decided it was in their best interest and safety to kill the bears. They opened fire. The bear cub was killed, but the mother escaped into the swamp. Later, a woman in Cove City was walking with her infant child and was surprised by the mother bear rushing out of the woods toward her. The bear seized the child and ran back into the woods. A search party was formed, but neither the bear nor the child were ever seen again. The legend claims that the orange-colored light seen near Cove City is the child's mother, still searching today. The Slippery Hill Light is associated with a cemetery in Plumtree, North Carolina, in Avery County. No one knows the origin of the cemetery light, but locals fear the Slippery Hill Light. It's said that anyone who sees the light hovering above the cemetery grounds will soon die, or lose someone close to them. For over 100 years, people have reported feeling an invisible presence jump onto the back of their horse with them, or an eerie feeling while driving past the area. Ephraim's Light is in the small town of Seaboard, North Carolina, in Northampton County. There's a 200-year-old plantation near Seaboard called Woodruff House. From time to time, people passing by the house may see a yellowish light inside the first floor. The light moves from room to room before vanishing. The legend is that Martin Woodruff, the owner of the plantation, was killed by a rebellious slave. Ephraim, the slave, fled but was soon caught and brought back to the plantation. His punishment was to be burned at the stake. It's said that shortly after, the light began to appear. The Thomas Divide lights can be seen from the Thomas Divide overlook near Cherokee on the Blue Ridge Parkway in Swain County. The Thomas Divide lights are multiple lights that flicker on and off throughout a mountain valley. Sometimes the light splits in two, and sometimes they combine together or change color. They usually appear as balls that rise straight up into the air, circle around, and come back down again. From there, they may fade out, or they may even repeat the process over again. And it's said that the lights show brighter during the winter months. They sound very much like the Brown Mountain lights at Linville Gorge, but they're over 100 miles away. When the tribe was asked about them, one man replied, "To the Cherokee, the supernatural is natural." To see them, just park at the Thomas Divide overlook on the Blue Ridge Parkway and then watch the opposite ridge. Some people say that if you flash your headlights, it will prompt the light to respond. There are a few legends that have tried to explain the lights, and all of them harken back to stories we've told you in previous seasons. One story claims that they're the lanterns of the Moonite people from Season 3. Others say that they're fireballs hurled by the giant Judaculla from Season 4. But the prevailing myth is about a Cherokee shaman. In Season 3, we also told you about the Trail of Tears and how Solly defied the government's encroachment onto their land. Well, he wasn't alone. Like Solly, they retreated and hid in caves but were tracked down by the army. As an example to others, the shaman was executed harshly. His body was dismembered and scattered across the mountain. The legend says that the lights are his spirit trying to find all the parts of his own body. The Screaming Bridge light is seen in Williamston, North Carolina, in Martin County. We've talked a lot about bridges on this podcast, but there are some that say that the Williamston Bridge on Yarl Road is the most haunted in the state. There are stories of at least 2 women dying on the bridge. The first story says that a rich local mill owner forced his wife there, kicking and screaming. He tied a millstone to her legs and chucked her into the water, still screaming the whole way down. The second story claims a woman was coming home from a Halloween party dressed in a cat suit, complete with red contacts. After picking up her baby from the sitter, the woman lost control on the bridge, and her car plummeted over the side, killing them both. Ever since then, the Williamston Bridge has been called the Screaming Bridge, because it's said the blood-curdling scream of the mill owner's wife can still be heard, as if she were still fighting for her life. Others report of cold spots and, as you may have guessed, a strange light that seemingly rises out of the water near the bridge. Now, at first glance, it may seem that an exuberant amount of these mysterious lights appear near water, either at the coast or at a swamp. But that's not really the case. They're spread out all over the state. In fact, there is a common factor here. It seems to be the railroads. The Mako Light, Boston Bridge, the Old Whitney Light, the Causey Light, the Tarboro Light, the Early Station Light, the Fremont Light. These are all associated in some way with railroad tracks, and they aren't the only ones. The Mintz Light seen near Roseboro, North Carolina, in Sampson County. A small, bobbing light resembling someone carrying a lantern appears near the railroad tracks. It was seen so often in the 60s that it was called Mintz's first and only tourist attraction. Dymond City Light is named after the town where it's seen. However, Dymond City, North Carolina, no longer exists. It was once near the coastal community of Jamestown in Martin County. Dymond City was a company town built in 1868 to support the lumber mill. A railroad was built to transport the timber and the workers. Today, eastern diamondback rattlesnakes are rare in North Carolina, but 150 years ago, they were prevalent. Dymond City was named for the 7-foot rattlers that were often found in the area. By the 1920s, the mill was wrapping up its operation and Dymond City was left little more than a ghost town. In 1927, a fire swept through the area, destroying virtually every building in town. Dymond City was never rebuilt. The railroads removed the tracks, and the town was left to be reclaimed by the forest. However, people who still venture there have reported strange things in the woods. Lights that dance and bob all along the path of the old railroad. Witnesses swear that it felt like the lights were beckoning them to follow. The lights are blue and orange and most often seen on clear nights. Then we have the Vander light, named after Vander, North Carolina, near Fayetteville in Cumberland County. The origin story of the Vander light is simple enough. One night, Ticketmaster Archer Mathers stood alone on the platform in the rain, waiting on the train to arrive. He heard the train in the distance and leaned over the edge of the platform to check on its progress. He had done this 100 times before, but on this night, he lost his footing and slipped off the platform. The fall extinguished his lantern and knocked him senseless for a minute. When he regained his wits, he found himself sitting on the tracks with the train barreling down on him. In the rain and without the lantern, the train engineer had no way of knowing that Archer was in harm's way, and he was killed. As with all the other ghost lights, the train station is now gone, and the tracks were moved to somewhere else. But the Vander light can still be seen where the station once stood. It's said that the light is the spirit of Archer desperately trying to wave down the train. The phenomena usually starts off as two balls of light that merge into one before fading away. Likewise, the Pactolous light gets its name from nearby Pactolous, North Carolina in Pitt County. East Carolina University in Greenville began as a teacher's college, East Carolina Teachers Training School. There was a young man named Edwin Cox who attended, and on one particular evening back in 1910, Edwin was on top of the world, riding his horse, wearing his finest suit, and with a ring in his pocket. Edwin was on his way to the nearby town of Pactolous to surprise his girlfriend at the train station. The girl had no idea he was coming, much less that he had planned to propose. The night, however, would not go as Edwin planned. The girl never arrived. The train broke down at the previous stop and couldn't continue. Disappointed and concerned, Edwin rode back to Greenville. It was now very late, and the road from Pactolous to Greenville was not the safest route. Edwin was ambushed by some thugs who robbed and murdered him. Shortly after, it was said the light began to appear along the tracks at Pactolous. The story goes that the light is the spirit of Edwin searching for his lost love. In another version, the girl also died a little while later of a broken heart. In this version, the light is the spirit of the girl trying in vain to get to the station and save her beloved from his grisly fate. Either way, they say if you drive along the road that runs beside the tracks and flash your headlights 3 times, the light will appear. And finally, let me tell you about the Catsburg ghost train near Durham. Cat Belvin's name was not really Cat Belvin. It was Eugene, but because he walked quietly and had fast reflexes, he earned the nickname Cat. And, well, it just kind of stuck with him for the rest of his life. Cat was Durham County's longest-serving sheriff, holding the position for an impressive 30 years, 1928 to 58. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Holding a position power for that long in a small southern town, he must have been corrupt. Well, in Cat Belvin's case, the stereotype of a small-town corrupt sheriff was indeed accurate. It was widely rumored that the only reason Belvin ran for sheriff was so that he could get rid of the competition for his own family's moonshine operation. His family also ran a small mom-and-pop grocery store called the Catsburg Country Store. The store was one of those places where old-timers would gather to pass the time with some juicy gossip or a tall tale. After his tenure as sheriff, Cat took over the store and it stayed in the Belvin family until it closed for good in the 1980s. As a kid, Cat could remember a story about a man that was killed walking the tracks that ran right up beside the old country store. But whether the story was true, he had no idea. Since it closed in the 80s, the store had sat abandoned, but apparently on certain clear, moonless nights, a light appears near the store. It looks like the light on a train. In fact, sometimes the light is accompanied by the sound of a train engine and whistle. However, unlike most of the other mystery lights, the Catsburg ghost train light never moves. It stays in one spot. The story goes that it's the spirit of the man who was killed on the tracks all those years before. In fact, some witnesses have reported seeing the apparition of a headless, shadowy form walking around the light. The now crumbling Catsburg Country Store sits on what used to be the property of the Stagsville Plantation, one of the largest slave plantations in the antebellum South. At one point, Stagsville was said to have had almost 1,000 souls in enslavement. With that kind of history, who knows where the hauntings may have started? The long-abandoned country store has a hand-painted black cat displayed on the front of the building. Perhaps an ominous warning for the superstitious, or a beacon for the spirits made of light. To learn more about these stories, check out North Carolina Ghosts, Lights, and Legends by Charles Gritzner. Check out NorthCarolinaGhost.com, ScaryHQ.com, HauntedNC.com, OnlyInYourState.com, and SouthernSpiritGuide.org. This episode was researched and written by Jeffrey Cochran and was produced and hosted by me, Dan Sellers. You can find everything about our production company, Wreak Havoc Productions, at our website, WreakHavocProductions.com. You can find the Carolina Haints podcast on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Please leave us a review and share this show with a friend. This podcast is also brought to you by Carolina Haints, Inc., a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting folklore storytelling throughout the Carolinas. You can help us on our mission by joining our team on Patreon. With monthly contributions of $5, $10, or $25, you can receive perks such as the Carolina Haints Map of Monsters and Legends, behind-the-scenes video series, and monthly mini-episodes that are exclusive for members. Just visit patreon.com/Carolina Haints to learn more. You can find everything about us, including the Carolina Haints book and tour dates for upcoming appearances, on our website, CarolinaHaints.com. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, simply at Carolina Haints. and feel free to contact us directly at carolinahaints@gmail.com. Thank you, dear listener, for returning to Season 7. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode. Tune in then to hear more about those things that go bump in the night.